Good morning, church. Good morning. How are we doing today? Good? You're not a very lively bunch this morning. And I hear we have tons of zucchini breads available at fellowship time today. Pam, were you dropping off zucchinis again? Friends, it is a joy and always a blessing when we gather in the house of the Lord. I just want to remind you that this morning you made a choice. You made a choice and to come and to give your heart in worship. And it is always a joy when we gather together as the larger body, just to see each other's faces, even with masks on, to hear each other sing, to welcome each other, and to be in prayer with one another. It is a joy to be with you this morning. We've had a busy week in the life of the church, and lots of things have been happening and moving, and it's just been so exciting to see the energy around here. Again, at Rainbow Coffee House this week, we had over 25 kids, and they were just amazing. They went through a speed dating kind of thing with a therapist, and the kids were all super nervous about it, but by the time they came down, they were ecstatic. Jeep is continuing to serve kids after school twice a week. The Boy Scouts were in our building again. They even set up and did a sign-up outside yesterday, and were in the yard. The quilting group was working for hours yesterday, and the beautiful quilts that they continue to make is just a joy, and I like to come in and just watch them and not do anything, and then tell them that they missed strings on the floor. It's just been a joy, and I just want to lift up. In the narthex, as you're leaving, there's the table with the cards for the prison again, and so we really just want to encourage that. Cheryl and I went and spent 2 hours with Jill yesterday at the Women's Center. Her parole hearing is coming up in the next couple of weeks, and so we invite you to be in prayer for her as she goes before, hoping for an earlier release, and so just a joy to spend time with people. Friends, as we come into this space, we enter into an attitude of prayer, and we acknowledge that this is not our land. And each week now, we do this at the beginning of our worship service to remember the atrocities that have been committed in the name of expansion, settling, and colonialism in the church. We acknowledge that we are gathering on the traditional territory of the indigenous peoples, We affirm that settlers have specific responsibilities in the journey of reconciliation with indigenous peoples. We remember these tribes, the Niitsi Tape, the Absaluke, the Cheyenne, the Ochoti, Shakowin. We give thanks to the Creator and to those people who have stewarded this land for generations, and we are grateful for the opportunity to live, work, and worship here, and seek to live into right relations with our indigenous neighbors and all of creation. Will you pray with me? Gracious and loving God, we thank you so much for the richness and abundance of this life and for the opportunity to gather here and now in this space. We thank you for the joys of this life, the sunshine as it beats down, the smells of fall even when they're slightly covered with sugar beets. We lift up those hard moments that we've experienced throughout this week. We watch as the world continues to burn. We watch as tragedy happens, and yet we know, Lord, that you haven't called us to fix all of the world's problems, but to encounter each person and all of creation with kindness and love in our hearts. So we take this time to center our practice on you, to focus on you and this community, and to just love a little more each day. Holy Spirit, may you be present in this place this morning. Amen. Friends, I have a surprise for us today. Our guest speaker's here. Josiah, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'll have to tell you, the first one didn't show up. And then the second one ended up with COVID in the household. And so we are so excited that you have joined us here today to be part of a larger conversation about relationships in our community, racism, and the amazing work that Josiah Huggs does here in the Billings community. And so, friends, we're going to go ahead and just kick off. And Josiah, if you want to come on down, I'll let you introduce yourself. Today, church is going to look a little different. And then we'll have music, interludes, and commercial breaks as we go. Yeah. You can move that chair. That mic's real close, so whatever's comfortable for you. So tell us about what you do in this community. You can take it out and hold it too if that's better.
Okay, yeah, let's do that. Well, my name is Josiah Huggs. Currently, I'm the Community Prevention Coordinator for Standing Buffalo Strong. That's the name of our suicide prevention department with the Billings Urban Indian Health and Wellness Center, which is a department of the Native American Development Corporation. I just get tired out whenever I have to introduce myself with our company. But since December, I've been working with the Suicide Prevention Department. Our targeted population is the 10 to 24-year-old urban Native youth. We have our gospel is that culture is prevention. So we have a lot of events, downtown and at MSU Billings, and we have some programming, and then we just play like games, or we have soup and a story, or just really trying to get that culture piece out there to our urban natives who, some of them might not even know anything about their tribe. They were born and raised here in Billings, and so that's kind of what I do today. This past Friday, we had a healing walk through downtown Billings. I don't know if you guys, some of you seen it in the paper or in the news over the past couple of days, to recognize, to honor those bodies that have been recovered from boarding schools so far, and to really honor those survivors of boarding schools, and just to acknowledge those atrocities that happen, but also to look forward and how do we move forward. We got to heal. We got to heal as a people. We got to heal as a community. We got to come back to that wholeness so that we can move forward.
Great. You also every week do a smudging of the downtown area, right? Yeah. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I call it smudging the streets. Now it's just kind of lack of a better term. So smudging is we burn either sweetgrass, sage, cedar, bare root, tobacco, either singly or in any combination of those. And it's symbolic of cleansing yourself of any negativity, negative thoughts, negative actions. And from that moment, from when you smudge, from that moment until it's time to go to bed, you look to respond. You look to just put the humanity back into your interactions and not get so caught up in the hustle and bustle of every day. So 2018, another little backstory I forgot to mention was that, I'm in recovery from addiction. I use Wellbriety, wellness and sobriety put together. Wellbriety, it's a movement started by Don Coyes, and it's just incorporating cultural teachings in order to combat addiction. And that's the only thing that's ever worked for me. So I preach that gospel as well. So I wanted, in 2017, I became the resource outreach coordinator with Downtown Billings Alliance. And in that position, you got to be out there on the streets, in the alleys with 2 resource officers, and we're trying to help the people that are on the street. And so, just brainstorming, like thinking outside the box, what can we do to bring these individuals back to reality? Because the bottom line of addiction is that you want to escape reality. Some people use food, some people use gambling, some people use shopping, some people use sex, people use alcohol, people use drugs. But the bottom line is addicts and alcoholics, we want to escape reality. So I was like, okay, what can I do to bring these individuals out on the street back to reality? Because majority of them are Native American. And so I was like, okay, well, I could just walk around with a smudge bow, and, our strongest link to our memory is our sense of smell. So I was like, okay, if I take that smudge around, and these individuals, a lot of them come from reservation or have been around smudge and cultural teaching. So I was like, if I'm able to bring that around through downtown, praying for these individuals, these people that are living on the streets, if they're able to smell that smudge, maybe, hopefully, that will bring them back to reality and give them just a little spark of hope. Because I know in the thralls of my own addiction, I had no hope. I had just no hope. I just gave up on everything. I didn't even believe in God anymore. And it was somebody that came and told me their story that just gave me a little tiny spark of hope, like from a lighter, like you just lit. Just that
the
little
one in
spark.
the back didn't work, so.
So that was the whole basis behind smudging the streets. That's why we started doing that in 2018. And also to pray for just being engulfed in that world downtown, just that everybody gets so caught up in the hustle and bustle of the day, we take the humanity out of our interactions. And just to pray for everybody doing business downtown, that they put the humanity back into their interactions with each other, and business owners and the street folks, that they put the humanity back into it, and that we put our humanity back into, just our interactions, the police officers, whoever we run into that day, that we see them as a human being and not a means to an end, or not something to gain, yourself, self-promotion or anything like that.
Wow. I love that you use the term the gospel, right? Because we often forget that that simply just is translated good news.
Yes, sir.
Right? And that we all have good news to be able to share in different places, whether it be whatever tradition we come from, and relying on hope to move forward. I really appreciate that. All right, well, we're going to have the choir lead us in a nice anthem. We get a little break, and we'll come back for more.
Some brightly burning, some dark and cold.
Friends, we come to that time where we greet one another in the name of Christ, and so I invite you to greet one another for a short time. Remember that our name tags are color-coded, yellow or orange meaning I like a little space, maybe an elbow bump or a fist bump. Red means please give me all the space you possibly can. Let us greet one another this morning. Knock, knock. Friends, as we gather back this morning, it doesn't matter. Whatever's comfortable for you. The camera is in the back corner, so. The kids are excused to meet Verna in the back to head off to Sunday school. So we invite you to head to Sunday school if you feel comfortable this morning. That's okay. Only have to do what we feel comfortable doing. So as we gather back, Josiah, so a lot of the work that I did in seminary around indigenous worldview or Native American worldview is a lot about how, especially we as white people, get really fascinated by your culture, and then we appropriate the hell out of it. Like we like to buy things made in China that are dream catchers that are in a store, or we see a ceremony or witness something that we think is truly beautiful, and then we try to incorporate it in our own practice or mold it to a Christian worldview or a white colonial worldview, which can be really dangerous. Yeah. And one of my professors always used to say the best thing that we can do when we admire another culture is to simply just honor and hold it and set it on the shelf and let it be part of our story. So how do you describe your religious view, your worldview, the molding of all the things that Christianity has done negatively to indigenous people in our history? Can you unpack some of that for us this morning?
All right, I'll give it a go. So So a little bit more background about me. You know, I grew up in, I attended Assemblies of God Church. My dad translated scripture into our language, the Crow language, throughout the late 70s and 80s. I was born in 83, so, you know, I was growing up in that, you know, era where, and, you know, I went to Sunday school every Sunday and then had to stay for the regular service afterwards, you know, as I was growing up. And my dad held Bible studies at home and, you know, I had to memorize scripture. So that's the kind of background I had. I didn't really, you know, I had the cultural teachings as far as, you know, social norms, how I'm supposed to conduct myself in a social setting, how I'm supposed to carry myself as a Crow man. I was taught those things growing up, but outside of that, or anything further than that, I didn't learn until, you know, I left the nest and I started my own journey as an early 20s, and I started learning about culture and dancing and singing, and then fast forward to when I started, you know, we call the Wellbriety movement calls recovery from addiction walking the red road. So when I started walking the red road 6 years ago, that's when I really started learning more and more about my culture and different cultures, different native tribes, and their teachings run very parallel to my own tribe and run very parallel to scripture. Every morning I read the daily meditations with Native American elders. It's a daily devotional. And how that book was put together was Don Koyas interviewed Native American elders all over North America and South America. And he just put all those teachings together in a 365-day page book. And so I read those every morning. And what I found was that as I started reading those, and that was, you know, probably about 4 years ago when I started reading those every day, every morning. You know, it's just a short page. It has the quote and then the teaching and then a prayer on there. And what I found was, like, as I started reading those, I was like, oh, I heard these teachings somewhere before. Where did I hear this before? And I just kept reading, and I was just like, and as I was reading these daily meditations, it was like God was becoming more and more real every day as I was reading these daily meditations. But in the back of my head, I kept thinking, like, I've heard these before. I've heard these teachings somewhere before. And then just one day, you know, after reading daily meditations every day for about 1.5 years, it just clicked. I was like, oh, I learned these in Sunday school. I learned these teachings in Sunday school. And they're in this book from teachings from Native American elders. And I was just like, boom. And like within that time, I was still struggling with my own faith. You know, up to that point, God was real to me maybe like 90%. I was 90% believing that there was a God. And through that, and then through talking to another elder, I was like, I'm struggling with this whole concept that there's no beginning or end to God. You know, the Alpha and Omega. He is the beginning and the end. I was like, how can something be that? And I was talking to this elder, and well, I call him elder, but he's probably like 10 years older than me. He's very wise.
Very wise.
Yeah. Anyway, native elder, and he just started laughing, and he was like, "That's easy." He said, "God's a circle. A circle doesn't have a beginning or end." And I was just like, my mind was blown. And in that moment, you know, reading those daily meditations and realizing that I had gotten these teachings in Sunday school when I was growing up, you know, very basic, just that humanity, putting your humanity back into it, responding to situations. And then that, when he said God's a circle, I was just like, in that moment, I was like 100% sure that there is a God and that he's with me and that he is helping me, you know, walk the red road. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great. So can you tell us a little bit about the Crow tribe's history and how they ended up here in Montana and the way that things are now?
Yeah. And that's, you know, that's kind of, as I'm doing my research, I'm finding out more and more. And a story that was, you know, an oral history story that was written down that I read was that we actually, you know, thousands of years ago, we were on the East Coast. And then one of our chiefs had a vision of the tobacco plant and said, go find this. You have to head west, you know, and go find this plant, and then it will help sustain your tribe, and use this plant to honor me. You know, Creator God was saying that to this chief in a dream. And so he searched and searched and searched, and finally he found it in, you know, this area. And, and, you know, being nomadic, you know, I remember my grandmother. She was born in 1922 or 23, and she would tell us, she would remember her grandparents talking about how when her grandparents were kids that they were still like migrating, you know, still nomadic life, that they would go as far down as Arizona during the winter. And then this was like their summer camping grounds area. And so there's a lot of, at one point, the Sioux, Hidatsa, and Crow were all one. And then the Crow and the Hidatsa split off from the Sioux. And then the Hidatsa and Crow had a big old fight, and then they split off. And then from there, the Crow like split off into two factions, was the River Crow and the Mountain Crow. So, and to this day, the Crow tribe and the Hidatsa, we still speak the same language. And it's a Sioux dialect, like according to like, you know, linguists and people that say that. So, what was the second part of the question?
I don't even remember. I'm so fascinated by the history.
Yeah. And so, you know, moving into this day, we were, I don't know why, but we were a very persecuted tribe. Everyone wanted to wipe us out. And I really don't know why. You know, I'm still learning, like I said. I'm only like 6 years into learning more and more of the cultural stuff. But all the surrounding tribes, the Blackfeet, the Sioux, the Cree, the Cheyenne, Arapaho, they all teamed up on numerous occasions and tried to annihilate us. So that's there, and I'm like, I don't know what to do with that information. I'm just like, okay, that happened, you know.
Also common biblical theme, right?
Yeah.
Throughout our history,
Mhm.
trying to wipe out different people, sometimes in the name of God and sometimes not, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. So how long has your family been in this area, and what's your family story and relationship to the Billings area?
Okay. Yeah. I come from the Crow Reservation. The reservation split up into different districts. There's the Arrow Creek District, there's the Bighorn District, the Mighty Few District, Valley of the Chief District, Reno District, and the Black Lodge District. So there's 7 different sections of the tribe, and I'm from the Arrow Creek District, which is Pryor, Montana on the map. Just like as the crow flies, like 30 miles south of here. So that's where I grew up. It's pretty much like a suburb of Billings. We were in Billings like every weekend. So my parents, like, they had us out in the country, and I grew up in the country. My dad had a ranch. You know, I had chores, and so that's where, at like the base of the Prairie Mountains, that area of that big patch of land there has been in the family since the original allotments in the early 1919. It was gifted to my great-great-grandmother, and when she passed, or my great-grandmother, when she passed, she gave that land to my dad, and that's where we've been.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to turn it over and sing a hymn here, and have a quick break, give you a rest. Do you need a water? Okay, I'll grab you a water. So let's sing our hymn 122, and our red hymnal are on the screen, God of the Sparrow, God of the Whale. All right, so we're going to actually open it up for the congregation to ask questions this morning. But there's one conversation that we had. There we go. Thank you. Wish my husband brought me coffee like that. So when we met a couple of weeks ago now, one of the things that you and I were talking about were just race relations in Billings. And so I think there's often right, when we talk about the other or we other people, we get into this space where, what was it like to grow up on the reservation? It must have been a whole different world for you, right? Or we kind of make these assumptions about people and time and space. And so, but we were talking about just race in Billings. And so can you talk to us about the experience that maybe our whiteness blinds us to more often than not?
I'll just share the experience that we talked about that day in the coffee shop. Was that one of the biggest things that I recognize is like on the daily, on the weekly, if not daily, I'll go into the store, Caucasian in front of me, Caucasian behind me, standing in line, ready to check out. The Caucasian cashier will chop it up with the Caucasian in front of me. And then when it's my turn to come up and pay for my stuff, it's crickets, nothing. Not even a hi, hello, nothing. And then as I'm walking away to the Caucasian behind me, oh, hello, how's your day going? How's that? And I'm just like, more often than not, I'm so used to it now, that doesn't even offend me. I just kind of laugh. Like, it just happens all the time. That's one of the biggest things, that I notice. So instead of, being victim, playing, oh, poor me, oh, they didn't say hi to me, they didn't talk to me today, instead of taking that stance anymore, I'll be the one. I'll be the bigger person, and I'll initiate that conversation when I walk up to the cashier and be like, hello, how you doing? How's your day going? And then start that conversation. And then we're talking, they're ringing my stuff up, I pay for my stuff, and then I leave. And I do that in hopes that, because I'm a big guy, I'm a big native, You're
not intimidating at all.
6'1", over 300 pounds, standing in front of you, I could see why you wouldn't want to talk to me. But so if I'm friendly and I'm kind, maybe the next native that comes in line, they talk to them. That's my hope. That's why I do that, instead of being the victim. Because far too long, I see a lot of natives in this community. When that happens, they'll cause a scene. They may cause a scene, or they'll go home and they'll talk smack about that cashier, and then everybody in their family knows that cashier at that store will not talk to you because you're a native. So anytime a member from that family goes to that store, they already expect it. Like, okay, there's that one that didn't talk to my mom, so she probably won't talk to me. And then they have an attitude towards the cashier, and then it's just a bad interaction. So that's why, I kill those kind of people with kindness. Maybe they're just scared. Maybe they don't know that, like I said, 6 foot, 300 plus man stand in front of them, they're too scared to say hi. That's one of the biggest ones that I see. And then, in that job downtown, and I'm downtown Billings Lions, I was the resource outreach coordinator from 2017 to 2019. I was tokenized a lot. They're like, oh, here's this successful Native American. Let's have him sit at the table to fill our quota.
I hope you don't feel that way this morning.
No. No, not at all. Not here. In those instances, they're like, they had me come to the table. It's like, okay, so they want to know my opinion. They want my perspective. And so I would share it. And they'd be like, oh, and then they all listen to me and they're like, oh yeah, that's good. We're going to do this. So that was a huge reason why I left that position. Because I was like, okay, the more and more that happened, I was like, okay, I'm just the token native here. So that happens a lot as well. And when I see it happening to another native, I go and tell them. I was like, hey, you better reevaluate your role here. I think you're being tokenized.
So where at in the community do you see the bridges that are building between the two cultures that are giving you hope right now?
I was part of a group with Councilman Yakowicz. Mike Yakowicz was a cross-community reconciliation, and it was a group of natives and a group of non-natives. There's started out with 15 in each group, and we met during the pandemic with social distancing, and then we had to switch over to Zoom. So groups like that. There's another, excuse me. There's another group. I had to go speak with a group of business owners that was meeting at the Hampton on the West End by the Sportsplex, and William Braun, he runs the Be Better World. He was running that with the, I don't know what they call him. He runs the chamber. So they were there, and they had, the room was filled, conference room filled with, and they had me on a panel, and I was able to talk about what was my experience trying to get a job here in Billings with businesses. And I told and so that more and more of that is happening. And then after there was, a little reception, and a lot of business owners came up and talked to me, and it was like, oh, I didn't know that this happened, because they're at the top and they don't know how their HR is handling. They really don't know the day-to-day twos, but more awareness being raised like that is good. And then also a lot more natives are not taking that victim stance, not saying, oh, this happened, our way of life was taken away, and they're moving past that victim stance, and they're moving more into healing and just moving forward in confidence. So that gives me hope as well. More awareness in the community is coming up, and then more natives, my counterparts, my peers, are just stepping up and moving forward.
So I'm going to turn it over to the group here, but I just want to point out for a minute just how our whiteness typically blinds us to something as simple as the interaction at the grocery store, right? And whether it's the fear of not knowing or the fear of the 6'1", 300-pound man, right? It is that space for us that, we talk constantly about how it is the simple ways that we show kindness and try to reach out to humanity and be in connection with people in little ways. I have to tell you, sometimes those cashier conversations are so painful. I'm envious that they don't talk to you. Because I hear whole life stories by the time I get through the Albertsons line. But just the pain and the hurt that experiences, and your awareness to see it when it happens to other people. And tokenism is such a huge part of that culture, I would imagine here. Mm-hmm. So I just really appreciate you shedding light on that and kind of talking about just the smallest ripple effects make a huge difference and a big difference. So we're going to turn it over and just offer the congregation the opportunity to ask questions and just to be thoughtful. And we always know that sometimes when we do this, we don't have the right terminology or language, and just know that this is a safe space in which we can do that. So are there questions you all would like to ask this morning? Yeah, Donna.
I was raised on a reservation in Montana while I was working, and I have witnessed reverse discrimination in the hospital at Fort Belknap when I was 7 or 8. I had cut my leg real bad, and the folks put me in the hospital. The kids would not have anything to do with me because I was a honky. And so I was in the hospital for a week, and nobody would play with me. looked at me. She said, "You can't be her sister. You're not Indian." My sister was darker. And so I said, "Well, yes, I am." But so in my life, in 60 years of difference, I have had discrimination because I'm white.
Gee, wasn't much of a question, but I love that you shared that.
Thank you for sharing.
And I think that acknowledges just how much stock we as people put into what we see as opposed to knowing the person and their story, right? And I've heard some of your other family stories and just thinking about that. In seminary, I actually had a colleague of mine who was very white-facing but was 50% black. And when she went to join the black student group, they wouldn't let her. And it literally, she was bringing like birth certificates and all kinds of things just to try to justify who she was. And we don't think about the amount of labor we place on minorities or the people that we've othered to try to claim who they are and how hurtful that can be.
Mm-hmm. And I can sympathize with what you shared as well. I got nieces and nephews that are half Norwegian descent and half Native American, and I've had to hear their stories of not being accepted in either world, and just how watching them, they're in their early 20s, how they've just educated themselves on both cultures, and how being educated in both cultures, knowing where they came from, is really propelling them. One's about to graduate from college, both the other two nephews are working, about to start families and stuff, and I'm really proud of them, just for educating themselves and coming from a real kind of tough, difficult position.
Yeah, Bev?
So when you travel outside of Montana, do you find that you're treated differently than the way you're treated in Montana? Are we so racist here that you find it easier to travel out of this area?
I wouldn't say racist. I guess just a lot of not understanding. Me and my family, my kids that were here, we went to Disneyland back in March of 2018, and and we were staying in Anaheim, just down the road from Disneyland, and we just went for a walk. We said, let's go see what's out here. There's like a mini mall down the road. And we went walking, and we said, oh, there's a gas station. Let's go inside, grab a drink. And we were just walking around, checking out, Anaheim and looking at the sights and sounds. And then we went into Disneyland that first day, and then we got back to the hotel that evening. And we all just kind of I think we all just kind of realized at one time, nobody stopped and stared at us. Not one time. And that's almost like a daily, weekly occurrence here. From little kids, I'll stop little kids, little Caucasian kids stop in their tracks and look at me and watch me walk by. And that was just because everybody down there is just accepting there's, it's more, what is it? Yeah, diversity, melting pot, all that. It was just cool, we can just be ourselves. We can just move about. We're free to move about the cabin. So that's a huge one. Even my kids noticed it. It's nobody's staring at us, Dad. I was just yeah, it's pretty cool here.
Well, we don't want to lose you in Billings, so.
Oh, no, I'm here.
Other questions? Yeah, Crystal.
I've got a two-part question. One is there a difference between smudging and stage writing? Because I've heard both sides of that.
Oh.
The other part of that goes to I recently kind of came into learning about stage writing, and then it was pointed out by somebody else that this is really a cultural thing, and that if it's not part of your culture, you shouldn't be doing it. just kind of curious what your thoughts were on it.
Okay. Yeah, burning of sage is considered smudging, and it's so like relative to the tribe. So I know, like with micro tribe, we use sage and cedar a lot, culturally, historically in the past. But today, you know, people use other roots and other herbs to smudge with. And we use a lot of like sweet pine to smudge with, which is not very, highly used or circulated today. And, you know, my whole stance with those kind of questions, like, if it's not part of your culture, should you smudge or not? I always fall back on the Wellbriety teaching. It's part of the talking circles. It's part of the whole Red Road to Wellbriety movement. It's a tradition. It's the third tradition, and it says it's up to the individual to decide if they belong. And, you know, that to me is so powerful. It's so huge because, like, that puts the humanity into it. Like, if anybody here in this room, you feel like you just need to smudge today and get rid of that negative energy and kind of reset, refocus, reset your day, and then just move forward in a positive way, then feel free to do it. Because, you know, God put that here on Mother Earth as a plant for all of us. He put that here for the people. He didn't say, okay, this is just for you, Crow people, not for everybody else.
Okay, great. Time for one more. Daryl? Yeah.
My mother was raised on a ranch in Pryor, and she knew Chief Plentyfoot.
Oh, awesome.
Did you hear that?
Oh, yeah. That's a big name. I'm actually a descendant of Chief Plentyfoot's sister, Goswell. That's where, because Chief Plentyfoot didn't have any kids. And so, like, there's Goswell, and that she's like my great grandmother. So I guess Plentyfoot is my great granduncle.
All right, time for one last question this morning. Yeah, Loeen.
I know affordable housing is a really issue in Billings. Does the native population, are they discriminated against in terms of housing? Do you find that as an issue here in Billings?
Personally, I have not had any issues like finding housing myself whenever I've had to look for it. I think, but like I said, it's all relative. It's in how you present yourself and how, you know, are all your ducks in a row when you go into the property management. You know, are you chaotic when you go in there and you don't know, you don't have a dollar to your name and you need a place to stay? So I think it's just all relative. Now I know, as far as on that note, you know, getting a loan, you know, we fill out the loan application and smudge and pray and cross our fingers it gets approved, even with all our ducks in a row. So that's there.
And some of that is systemic, right? Just deeply rooted in opportunity that wasn't available to people at different times, and the ability to have generational wealth and not have generational wealth, and the different benefits are being blacklisted from being able to get a loan for a long period of time, right? So we may not always see it right in front of us or relatively feel it personally, but we sense the systemic problems that have caused that to harm a larger group of people. Is that something you would agree with?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Well, let's sing one more hymn, and then we'll have our announcements, and then we have a beautiful fellowship time. And Josiah, I hope you stick around and get to meet the beautiful people here at Grace, and just know that we're committed to being a reconciling church here. And as a gay man and as a pastor, that isn't just about the gay issue, right? That is about the way that we focus and think about all people being welcome in this space all the time. whether you're Christian or not, whether you come from a different racial background or ethnicity background, whether you're abled in a different way. It is us being part of the conversation and leaning into relationship with a wider human connection. So let us sing our hymn, Many Gifts, One Spirit, 114, or on the screen. All right, Tammy, let's roll our announcement video this morning.
At Grace United Methodist Church, we appreciate all the ways that our members contribute towards building a strong community through ministry. Here's a look at some of the ways you can help through your time and involvement. There will be a celebration of life service for Constance Terry on Tuesday, September 28th at 11 a.m. A light lunch will follow the service. Masks are required, and people in attendance will need to sign in with a name and phone number for contact tracing as a COVID precaution. Looking to spread the warmth of God's love to others? Join the Grace United Methodist Quilting Ministry. The group meets every Saturday at 9 a.m. in the quilting room near the fellowship hall. No quilting or sewing experience is necessary. The 406 youth groups are meeting on Wednesdays. Join us for fun and fellowship with youths from all the UMC churches in Billings. The MSU Billings United Campus Ministries 2021 fundraising dinner is coming up on September 28th. If you are interested in attending with Grace UMC, please get in touch with Carol Heath. Let's support this outstanding ministry. That's all for today. To find out more, please check out our Facebook page or visit our website at graceumcbillings.org.
thank you for being a part of Grace United Methodist Church.
Thanks to Tammy for all she does, hiding in that back room, and the lovely voice. I mean, she should be on radio. Bev?
Yes, we will have additional help for the reception on Tuesday. If someone could receive either Lori or I after service, we can give you an idea of what we're going to need help with.
Any other announcements for the good of the body? All right. Well, one last thing we're going to let you all know about is Josiah's podcast. And so if you want to just give us a brief kind of rundown and where people can find that if they want to continue hearing the conversation with you.
Okay. So the podcast is called Unspoken Words, a Native Podcast. You can find it on Spotify, Amazon, Google, wherever you listen to your podcast, you can find it. If you search it on there, you'll see a picture of myself and my two co-hosts, JC Beaumont and Randy Bear Don't Walk. And it's primarily for recovery from addiction. We talk about recovery topics. We share our testimonials on there about the topic, and we are really like open. We wear our recovery on our sleeve on the show. I mean, I do that all the time anyway, in hopes that sparks some hope in somebody else's journey. So we release an episode every Thursday night, and they run anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half. Sometimes we get long-winded, and as you can't tell, I like to talk. So sometimes we go 2 hours, but each episode is definitely talking about recovery from addiction, and we do share our humor on there. Some people tell us that, you know, they just like to tune in and listen to us crack jokes and make fun of stuff. So, yeah, if you guys want to listen, and we talk about a lot of cultural stuff too as well. Myself, I work in suicide prevention. Randy Bear Don't Walk. He's out on the street, right? His position now is he's working with the street folks, trying to get them the treatment, trying to get them the resources that they need. But he's a pastor as well. He's young people's pastor at Freedom Church on the West End. JC, he's just like a kind of a free spirit artist type of guy, but very knowledgeable, educated himself, you know. And both Randy and JC, you know, did time, you know, reform. They're in recovery. All three of us are in recovery, and we just like to share our stories and try to spark some hope in somebody.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for being here with us. Can we give our guests a round of applause this morning?
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me. Thank you for asking me to come in. And, you know, I don't feel tokenized.
Good.
I'm honored. I'm very honored to be here and speak.
Okay. Well, we appreciate you being here today, and also just the tremendous amount of work you're doing in our community. And you are often in some tough spaces with people, and that work is never easy. So you will be in our prayers as a community as you continue to do that work, and hopefully we can find some ways for Grace to partner with you here in the Billings community.
Oh, for sure. I'm always looking, you know, for community partners. So now that you put that on the table, I'm going to hold you to it.
All right, sounds good. Well, while we were singing our last hymn, I think I convinced Josiah to sing for us before we close with our benediction today.
For sure. And I'll share this song. There's like going back to the early 1900s, you know, when there's like really a Pentecostal type of evangelical movement on my reservation, and people started hearing these words in our language. You know, they weren't literate in English yet. They didn't know how to read and write in English yet, so they would pray, and they got these words in our language, and they're like, oh, and they knew when they got these words they were songs, so they turned them into songs, and they started singing them, and they would sing with like just a tambourine and sing these songs, and we call them crow hymns. And then later down the road, you know, moving forward, when we started reading the Bible, started learning how to read and write in English, they found out that all these songs were like biblical, and they were singing these songs, you know, just that they got the words through like visions and fasting and praying and really seeking God and seeking Christ. So the one I want to sing for you guys today is my dad's song. The words translated roughly is, above there's a road, a straight, clear path. Tell the people about it, my child. Someday, tell, this is where I want you to come back to me. Tell everyone, tell all the people, my child. And someday, when your time is up, that you would return to me on this road, but tell everyone about this road. So yeah, and this came to my dad, in a time when, he struggled with addiction, and, he was hungover, going through DTs, and he felt like he was losing his mind. And then, God called out to him and said these words to him, and he knew right away that it was going to be a song. And so then he turned his life, back around. So, yeah, I'll sing it for you guys. Iwa he ra he ra he ra he re Wagu kora lianam Dachi gadesh Iwa he re Ogoni huwashtreka he balaga hawere Iwa here Virach bagesh Chihuahua gua he balaga hawere Iwa here Wagu kora lianem Tache gadesh Iwa here Ogoni huwashtreka he balaga hawere Iwa here Babem shona kutada lole wa he balaga hawere Iwa here Here, here, Bagu Kodalianam, Tachi Gade Shiva here.
Thank you. Friends, we have fellowship time in the fellowship hall, and we invite you to keep the conversation going. May you receive this blessing in the name of the Creator, Son, and Holy Spirit. Go forth in peace.
Oh, you didn't know?